Hi folks, welcome to another episode of Cyber Narratives. I'm your host, Mathieu Cyber Dr. Puto, and today we are taking a look at my history as a salesperson in order to say how you can become a better person for purchasing cybersecurity solutions. That's right, I have done cybersecurity sales before, and I'm here to tell you all the little secrets that we salespeople have in order to sell our solutions and what you can do to have the best value possible from your investment in cybersecurity. So with this said, you might be able to say, hey, it's actually quite easy to buy, Matthew. All you really need to do is select a solution and buy it. How hard can it be? Well, throughout this episode, you'll see that it's not that easy to buy the right solution, but there's a simple plan that you can follow that will take you to the right place to make the best investment possible. And we're going to talk about this through stories on this episode. So here are the 3 takeaways that you'll get from listening to this episode. Number 1, ask yourself why you want to buy something. Why do you want to buy? It seems like such a simple question, but when you point it down to why it is that you need a solution and what are the effects that you're expecting, then you know that you're on the right path to making the right purchasing decision for your company. Number 2, and this one, not many people do it, and I think they're completely missing out. You need to ask the salesperson, what are their incentives? By doing this, you create a relationship of trust, saying, hey, I trust you with my information, you trust me with yours, and we can come together with the best possible agreements. Because salespeople do have incentives, and if you consider them, you might get the much better deal. Let's say grow the pie in the negotiation table, and therefore end up with a much better deal than you've done if you didn't. And for today's last tip, we will leverage this all information into the late stages. So if you know yourself, if you know the company that you're buying the solution from and all the partners around it, you can have amazing negotiation and come out with amazing deals that will save your company money, time, and just headaches from going around the table, not being able to negotiate what you want. With this said, let's go, friends. So through this episode, we'll have 2 parts. Number 1, understanding you. What are you made of? And number 2, understanding the counterparts. What are the salespeople like, and what can you do to make sure that you get the best deal possible through knowing them? Make sense? All right, let's start with the first part, understanding yourself. Part 1, understanding yourself. Before we start into any debates, let's ask ourselves why we need to understand what we need for ourselves. So this is super important into understanding ultimately the value that we're going to propose, right? How do you even determine if it's a good deal that you're making or a bad deal? And this all starts with understanding yourself, right? So think about it. If in a commercial sense, you have a Lamborghini for $80,000. It seems pretty cheap, right? I mean, I'm not a Lamborghini person, but I think these go on the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it might be a good deal. But think about it. You might be a family dad or family mom, and if you have 4 kids, they're not going to fit in your Lamborghini. That's not going to suit your needs, right? So we have to understand ourselves. What do we want before we go and purchase the car? What do we want before we go and purchase a cybersecurity solution? So here are the 3 questions that you need to ask yourself in order to know yourself. The first one, as I said it before, you need to ask yourself, why do you need this solution? So the reason that you need to ask yourself this, think about it. When I was a salesperson back in my CrowdStrike days, we used to sell EDR, which was one of our solutions. All you need to know is that it protects the endpoint, so computers, against hacks and gives visibility to security teams. That's all we need to know for today. It was quite a big trend when I started working there, and a lot of customers were coming to me to say, hey, Matthew, I need an EDR. And I go like, great. Can you tell me a bit more about why you need an EDR? And afterwards they'd say, well, I need an EDR because it protects me better. Like, okay, what do you mean by protecting you better? And then they would say, I don't know. I just heard from other people that they protect better. So I'm like, yeah, they do, but are you sure you're here for the right solution? Because EDR also require a little bit more manpower and different things. So ultimately you have to understand, why do you want it? Do you have the capabilities behind the technology to have the right people? Do you have the right things behind it? And this takes a little bit of reflection, because so many customers will come within a big plan, like we need to buy this right now, it's in my guidelines. and ultimately they're going to buy it and they're not going to be able to install it, use it properly, and they're not going to get all the benefits that they should be getting with all that money that they're spending. So first step, figuring out why you want to buy a certain solution. Now number two, you need to figure out how a technology fits into your cybersecurity strategy. So cybersecurity strategy is something that is very important, especially if you're a tech company, because it is the foundation of how you protect yourself. And this is derived from the business strategy itself. So to give you an example of how you can build a cybersecurity strategy and verify if it is aligned to your purchasing decision, we'll set the following example. You are a tech company and you develop generative AI models to help doctors, precisely surgeons, perform surgeries. Now, hospitals choose you because you have a lot of features, which is very helpful, and you have a very reliable platform that doctors need when they perform surgery, right? Because you can't have it crash in the middle. And your platform is very good at it. So congratulations. Now, your business strategy here is likely going to be rooted towards developing more features. So being able to be agile, to respond to new demands from doctors, and you're going to want reliability in your platform. And therefore, when you translate these two things within a cybersecurity strategy context, you're going to keep these elements, right? You're going to want to be as agile as possible and have the maximum amount of reliability and confidentiality, right? Because we don't want any hackers to be able to break into these systems. Can you imagine the damage that this would cause? It's all measurable, but it wouldn't be very good, So this is why cybersecurity strategy follows business strategy. Are you with me so far? What we said is that we've derived a business strategy into a cybersecurity strategy. Now, if you think about a cybersecurity solution, given these two constraints, which is lots of innovation and having a lot of security and reliability within the platform, these two are what solution can we buy with this too? So if you think about it, perhaps one solution that would be good would be to shorten the development time for new applications, right? So when you have an application, you want to make sure that it's not released with flaws, right? So that nothing in the hospital can be contaminating the application and then crashing it in the middle of an operation, which wouldn't be good. So one thing that you could do is buy a solution that would shorten the delay time to understand how vulnerabilities are within the application. Hope you're with me so far. So if you have a good application that's able to do this, you might be able to reduce by 1, 2, or 3 days the development of new application, the release of new application. And this can translate into dollars. Now, it's amazing if you're able to transfer how many days saved would lead to X many of dollars, because this would lead to massive, massive benefits in terms of defining the financial gain that you'll have with it, which leads us to the third point. What quantifiable results do you expect to get with the solution that you're purchasing? So if you're purchasing a solution to shorten the time that you develop new applications, then how much money are you saving? How much money are you making? What's the end business for you? And this will be super, super good to define an ROI later and pick the best solution. Now, it's a tiny bit challenging, I'll give you this, to understand all the parameters in your business. But when you have it, when you've done that homework, you come out to the negotiation table like the king that you are, and you're able to make the best decisions for your business, for your cybersecurity, and ultimately for yourself, right? So when we buy a cybersecurity solution, what we care about is the value, which is a factor of the benefits that you get from using a solution minus the cost of this solution. And this together makes up the benefits, and this is what we use to calculate which solution we're going to pick based on our constraints. Good, we've talked about ourselves. Now let's talk about the other people that you'll be sitting with at the negotiation table, and you'll see it's quite juicy. Part 2, understanding the other people in the negotiation. Now this part is absolutely critical, and the reason for that is because I've seen for the same product, people getting this 2 different quotes, one of 10,000 and the other of 80,000. I repeat, for the same exact product, you may pay 8 times the price. And that all depends on the information that you give and the negotiation you're going to have with the person. So it's super important that we understand how we interact with each person within the purchasing cycle. Good. So let's get started on the project part. The very first conversation you're likely to have is with the cybersecurity salesperson for the software vendor. Now, the software vendor are those that actually make the solution. They make the solution and then they resell it to other people. We'll get to those people in a little bit. So the first conversation you're gonna have is likely on a Zoom call with a cybersecurity salesperson. They're not experts in cybersecurity. They've likely sold other IT stuff, but it may be their first time selling cybersecurity. What they're gonna try to do here is get information from you as to where you stand in your project to determine the best next steps, right? Because maybe you're looking for a solution that the cybersecurity salesperson does not have. And another thing that they want to know is when are you planning to buy it? Because as salespeople, we have to determine when we will get the deal in, if it comes in at all. So at this phase, it's important that you give out information, but you also ask for information in return. And you'll see this is a key thing that you always have to do. Whenever you give something, ask for something. It may be a demo, it may be a technical conversation, it may be an introduction to another customer, or it may be information about them, how they work. Because the more information you're going to be able to gather and use is all things you're going to be able to use in the final negotiation to either get more share of the deal, so get a better deal with more things that you need, or get, let's say, increase the pie, which is a negotiation concept, which means that everyone gets more. So always try to understand what are the different things within the cybersecurity project. Be curious about what is going on and how you can, the information that might be relevant to you later on in the future. Now, at the end of the call, the cybersecurity salesperson will have understood a little bit of your need and will be able to see whether your need matches the offering of the solution. Hopefully these two match, and then afterwards you may be taken at different places. Perhaps you'll meet a technical person from the software vendor. Perhaps you'll meet their bosses in case it's necessary to escalate the situation in case there's different questions. But this usually happens after some conversations. Usually you might either meet the technical person or what's called a reseller. Now what you know is that most cybersecurity companies will sell to resellers who will then send to people like you, your company. This is so that it simplifies the process a lot. So cybersecurity companies are doing this in order to not necessarily have so many people on the field so that they can have so they can offer support to their customers, local language and different things like this that offer tremendous amount of value for the customer. Because the software vendor will produce what's mostly a general solution. You'll have a specific need, and the reseller is bridging these two by accompanying you through the introduction of the solution and perhaps selling some services as well, because selling services is a key part of the reseller business. So now we've understood the two parties that you'll be interacting with in buying your solution. So let's go deeper into their incentives, what they want out of this deal. The first one, the cybersecurity vendor wants to have three things. Number one, the biggest deal possible, because bigger deal means more money. When you think about how their business is run, they make a solution. It costs a lot of money to make a solution, but then selling it is basically, it's pretty free almost. It's all about the development cost. So they want to get it out as much as possible and sell as much of it as possible. Number two, they have to be able to predict when they're going to get the money. And so the salesperson that you'll meet with wants to predict it quite a lot. Their manager wants to predict it even more. And their manager's manager wants to predict it a ton. And the more higher up you go in the organization, the more predictability becomes important. Why? Because companies like this have a lot of costs, right? They need to be able to invest in R&D, be able to pay everyone within the company, to be able to do so many things or keep customers or investors happy. And if they cannot predict how much money they're going to make, it's very hard to be accurate in your forecasting, your financial forecasting. So cybersecurity salespeople care about predictability. And remember, this is all important because all these factors are going to be enabling you to get the best deal possible. And number three, the final incentive is sometimes a little bit random. Sometimes because you sell one solution particularly, you can get more incentives. Sometimes if a customer is using one solution and you manage to replace it with your own, you get more money, things like this. So there's really opportunities for you to work with a salesperson to see how best you can serve them and they can serve you back, right? It's all about giving and taking. So with this information, what do we know? Whenever we have the opportunity to give the salesperson something that they want, so they want a bigger deal, okay, what can I get for that bigger deal? What can I get you? Because especially if you go at the end of the fiscal year, let's say the salesperson is making 40K and you're mostly likely going to buy 25. You say, okay, you want me to buy 40, what can I get for 40? And then you'll see the salesperson and their manager and everyone will be willing to give you a lot of things to get this deal across the line. So it's always worth it to understand what are the incentives in terms of financial gain. Now, in terms of, this is the biggest one, in terms of deciding when you're going to buy. You probably have your own timeline. Maybe you need to buy it within a certain time period because for whatever reason within the company or outside the company. Now, if you have the luxury of being able to negotiate the purchasing date, this is when it becomes very interesting for you as the buyer because salespeople care a lot about predictability. And if you're able to say, I will buy you within this timeline, and you're able to prove it saying, hey, I've spoken to X and Y person, we're all on board to do it then, cybersecurity salespeople are willing to give you a very, very good discount or good terms for your contract. And lastly, other incentives. It might be quite interesting. Like for instance, maybe you could do a review of the product on Gartner, or maybe you can do a customer testimony. So it's all things that you can do for free. It takes a little bit of time, but ultimately if you're looking for negotiation leverage, this can be something that you can look into. Now, we've talked about the cybersecurity sales part, which is the place where you buy the software. Now, this is usually between 70 and 85% of the cost. So the 15% and the 30% that are missing, where do you think they come from? They come from the reseller. Now, the reseller is quite a unique business because usually the 15 or 30% that they're going to sell is not as interesting to them because they have to have a lot of human cost related to integrating the solution, to working with you, to providing support, to dealing with all the things that are happening. And really the 15 to the 30% bonus that they're going to make out of it is not significant enough. So why do you think that a reseller would get involved in this kind of thing? The answer to this is that they usually want to sell you other services to complete the cybersecurity solution. So let's say in my case, EDR, it provides two things. It blocks attacks and it provides visibility. You're like, cool, you have visibility, but what are you going to do with it? You need people to look at it and do different things to protect your IT better. So this is when you need a reseller or any other service, but the reseller already has the contact with you, so they're almost purchasing the contact with you to be able to sell you this service. Now, when going to negotiation with them, it's important to understand, do your homework, understand yourself in order to determine this is what I need, this is what I don't need. And if you need it, what price are you willing to pay for it? How much would it cost me to do it in-house? What would be the benefits of it? These are all things you need to determine beforehand, at least having a pretty important idea of what you can expect from negotiation and then get a good deal or no deal. We don't want to end up in the bad deal with a bad partner and something we'll regret. So always understand people. Be curious about what their interests are and know your own interests to be able to grow the pie and get as much resources as you can. Okay, we've done the most important part. Now is the time for the final negotiations. We need to go at the table with everything that we need. For yourself, you need to confirm that the solution fits your needs. Is it really filling up the needs that you've set within the beginning? Next, you need to have an estimate of the benefits that you will get from this solution. So when you integrate it, how much benefit are you getting? And lastly, number 3, is really important because this is often overlooked. You need to understand how long will it take until the benefits kicking of the solution. Because it's not like you sign and everything's done. You need to integrate it, to tune it, to do different things. And different solutions will have different ability to do so, depending on your OS, depending on many things that are a little bit technical. But this is all things you can determine and come to the negotiation table with. So that's for yourself. Now, for your software vendor, you need to understand their incentives. We've talked about it. What do they care about? When do they want it? And 2, a negotiation deadline. They want predictability. Make them pay for it. Now, your reseller, it's very okay to have more than one because they might sometimes play tricks on you and to get a bigger margin than they need to. So at least talk to 2 in order to be able to differentiate the pricing and the different services that you have. Also, we've talked about it. Calculate the ROI that you can get on the services, return on investment. What can you get if you purchase from one reseller to another reseller? Good, it's conclusion time, folks. So what have we learned through this episode? Number 1, focus on you. I will never say this enough, focus on you. See what the benefit of the technology could bring to you. How does it fit into your cybersecurity strategy? How does it fit into what you want to achieve? And how do you measure its results, right? How? Is it time saved? Is it money saved? How does it translate into dollar value? Next, we've learned how to always trade, give and take, and everything in the negotiation should be about giving and taking. Take as much as you can in order to be able in the best position at the end of the negotiation to ask for what you want. In the final negotiation, you'll want to use all the things that you've understood about yourself, about the vendor. Now, it's important that you understand that this negotiation might last a long time because if the software vendor becomes a partner, then you're going to need to keep them and keep having conversations with them. So always use the information that you have, but remember, this is going to be a lasting relationship. Invest in it and you will get something back out of it. Good folks, with this information, you're ready to be a real champ at purchasing the right cybersecurity solutions for your company. I hope you've learned a ton from this episode. I hope you enjoyed it too. I'm Mathieu Petot, Cyber Doctor, and I'll see you on the next one.